Hey, Guoba here. If you're just starting out or relatively new, I hope this beginner guide video helps you out. I'm going to be going through an overview of HSR, why it's a nice time to start, what the gacha system will be like, and some good choices for pulling. Then onto how to properly upgrade your units and build teams, as well as resource management. I do guides on every character that comes out, so like and sub if you want to see that. But I hope you have a great time in this game, and let's begin. So you probably already know, but HSR is a turn-based gacha RPG. Since it's live service, there will be new events and stories every single patch, and patches last 6 weeks long. The first 3 weeks are the first half, and the next 3 weeks are the second half of a patch. HSR is not fully open world like, for example, Genshin is, but it has a decent amount of exploration nonetheless. Its main draws though are the story and combat modes. And the further you explore, the stronger the enemies you'll face, and upgrading your characters and properly building your teams will be key to beating them. Your characters can be upgraded in various ways. You can level them up. You can equip a strong light cone on them, which serves as the weapon system. You can level this light cone up too. You can level up traces, which are the abilities of your characters, and these will scale how much damage or buffs or heals they provide for your battles. You can also equip characters with relics, which is the core gear grind of this game. And you can use duplicates to enhance your characters even further. Which light cones and relics and traces are best to focus on will always be explained in character guides of the character you are looking for, and there are in-game resources too. Investing properly into your roster and teams is pivotal to beating endgame combat. The combat is turn-based and uses an action value system where the faster you are with your speed stat, the earlier you act. Though it's not mandatory to act first, and you will always get another turn until the mode ends or you die. You'll be facing off versus enemies all the time. Some are little trotters, and some are destructive bosses that require strategy to beat. There are so many different combat modes to enjoy and test out though, some that can completely change the game and how it plays. For example, there are a bunch of roguelike modes where you can push your characters to their limits and unlock new mechanics to blow up your enemies. So is 3.0 a good time to start? I think the best time might have been 2.0 because of Dr. Ratio and Penacony, but 3.0 is still an awesome time to begin. We have a free standard 5-star selector, we have a whole new path, Amphoris, a brand new planet, and lots of shiny rewards as usual. There is also a rare case where we have 8 limited banners in this one patch alone, which does seem scary, but do not worry about pulling all of these units. Instead, it offers a great chance to pick up one of many different units right at the start of the game. They also added a bunch of nice quality of life to this patch, with gear being easy to min-max. You can choose 2 subsets on gear and even reroll gear at a heavy cost. The new leveling guide is also here to help you gear your units and what to focus on with your resources. If you want to know even more about choosing your favorite characters, then I would do research with external in-depth guides on them, as this in-game guide often recommends based on usage, and not all characters are equally used. Other great quality of life features include past event weapons being accessible in the Herter shop, so you don't have to worry about not starting before 1.1 anymore. We also have a ton of other great free light cones in this shop, as well as the Forgotten Hall one. So what do you want to focus on doing? Well, it's a game, so please feel free to enjoy what you want at your own leisure. But if you are stuck, I recommend just focusing on the main Trailblaze mission. These are the main story quests, and will progress through the journey of the Astro Express crew. It will unlock all these new places with all its exploration, power-ups for the main character, and more. You'll get to meet all these characters that you'll be able to pull in the gacha system and use in combat. When doing main story quests, don't forget to explore around whilst visiting new areas and grabbing chests and doing quick puzzles. It may not seem like much, but it stacks up for a lot of XP and resources, which will help you upgrade your characters as soon as possible. Trailblaze continuances should also be done. They're like a main story, but they instead go back to a previous location we explored in a past version. These happen when there is downtime on the main story. If you want to take it chill though, then mix in some companion and side quests before going on to the next planet. You can really immerse yourself, talk to all these characters and NPCs, and understand more about the lore before moving on and meeting a whole new cast of characters. I recommend doing these if you want to truly enjoy the story of the game, as once you've gone to the next planet, it feels a bit harder to return and complete all of these. Finally, make sure to do events when they pop up, as they are time limited and they give you premium currency and resources. They will be on this event tab up here, and you can play them early. Just be warned, it might spoil you on some upcoming characters, since it's usually based on the newest location we visit. But speaking of characters, how do we get them? You'll be using Stellar Jades to acquire passes to pull with. You'll also get passes for free from in-game content and events. You have these grey passes which you don't want to spend Jades on. These are used for the Departure Warp and the Stellar Warp. You also have these gold ones which are used for the limited banners. These are the ones you want to spend Stellar Jades on. Departure Warp is a beginner banner. You need 50 pulls with a discount, so it costs 40 in reality. It will guarantee a 5-star standard character, so one of 7 among Welt, Shepard, Yanqing, Bronya, Bailu, Himiko, and Clara. There are guides around on which are the best. Most of them are still great. I just recommend Welt and Yanqing the least for overall value. Shepard and Bailu are fine to get as they will serve as great sustains until you want a limited one. Bronya is still an amazing support, especially when starting out, and will be a great investment for your first team. Himiko and Clara are awesome DPS that can carry your team's damage for a long time. Himiko specifically is still pretty relevant in the endgame. And once you've done this beginner banner, you can also select any one of them that you want in the event screen. To pull this first, it'll be random, then you can choose the exact one you want just after. Once the beginner banner goes, all you have left are the limited banners or the standard banner. The standard banner is where you'll be using your regular passes as you accumulate them and getting some nice drops, but the 5 stars are still only the 7 standard ones from earlier. So again, your Stellar Jades should be used on the limited banners, and for most players, stick to just the character one for a long time. These banners won't be available all the time, the characters on them change every 3 weeks normally, and you cannot pull them on any other banner. They also come with a signature Lycone weapon. Some are really powerful, some are just good, but a lot of the time you are doing just fine with a free-to-play friendlier option. You'll need 90 pulls to hit hard pity on a banner for a guaranteed 5-star, but this basically never happens. The chances of that are astronomically low. In fact, you'll be pulling a character more around 75 to 80 pulls, which is a soft pity, and the average pulls you need is actually a bit lower than this. You'll have to unfortunately beat a 50-50 chance to get the character you want. The other 50% is getting a standard 5-star from before. But because of how HSR works, it's more of a 55-45 chance. If you lose this 50-50 though, the next 5-star will be the featured limited one. The Lycone banner has slightly better odds, pity is 10 pulls less, and you only have to beat a 75-25 to get the limited cone. Please play and spend responsibly though, and if you start getting unlucky, remember it's a game. Avoid the gacha if you're sensitive to these things and instead try to enjoy the main story and combat modes with your current roster. Now the banners for 3.0 are the Herta, Jade, Lingsha, Fei Xiao. In the second half of 3.0 we will have Aglaya, Butil, Silverwolf and Robin. I have a full video on who to pull, but if you want a quick summary, I recommend picking up a strong and recently released main damage dealer with either the Herta or Aglaya, and even Fei Xiao works if you prefer her. We don't know too much about Aglaya just yet, and Herta has some very free-to-play friendly teammates confirmed, so on that basis alone I'd recommend her over the others right now for new players. After your DPS, Robin would be my next pick, then maybe Lingsha afterwards. Robin is an amazing universal support and is one of the best units in the game right now. You could even pull for her without a limited DPS and use someone like Himiko in the meantime. And finally, Lingsha is a powerful healer, but she's not necessary and you won't unlock her true potential and teams for a while anyway if you're brand new. Now, you don't even have to pull that much to get a solid roster going, as the game will give out free units throughout the story. So let me go through them and talk about who is worth putting your resources into. I recommend investing into Serval, but only if you're planning on pulling the Herta, as she is a formidable secondary DPS for her teams. Otherwise, she's not necessary. Asta is a great first support to invest into, but I would prioritize Bronya if you got her from the Departure Warp or your Selector. You'll also be getting supportive Trailblazer paths which are much stronger than Asta anyway. And Yukong is another Harmony unit you get for free, but she is annoying to use especially for newer players, and ideally she's at E6 to help alleviate part of the problem, which is not happening for a long while. I love the concept, but newer units work better and easier. Natasha is a fine very early sustain, but ideally you ignore her as soon as possible and instead focus on Gallagher or a 5-star sustain. Even Lynx would be better to use, and she is also free. Qingchui is a great DPS among 4-star options. You could carry on using her throughout your journey, even into harder content. Her problem is she is RNG and gobbles up your skill points in fights, and so she has limited synergies, especially for newer players. Hatta, I think you definitely should invest into. She makes farming AoE stages a real breeze. She can be a solid early DPS, and she rolls Pure Fiction, which is one of the 3 endgame modes in Star Rail. She is also a fantastic sub DPS for the brand new The Hurter. Yes, they can be in the same team. For Dan Hung, Destruction Trailblazer, and Preservation March 7th, they are good early on, like anyone else, but these guys don't serve much purpose in the endgame. However, Trailblazer and March both have path swapping mechanics. Once you've unlocked the Trailblazer's 3rd and 4th paths in Penacony and Amphorius, paths I don't want to spoil, you can use them in so many meta endgame teams as a supportive unit. This is also a good reason to progress through the story so you can access these forms, but there's no rush. And for March 7th, her 2nd form is a pretty good secondary DPS in a few teams, and she has a solid niche going forward. So you can level and use both of these units early on, as levels will carry over, but don't go too ham on their traces as they will not carry over due to being separate kits. Now there are other 4-stars that you might drop from pools, and so here are the ones I recommend using. First off, Gallagher is an amazing sustain and is up there with 5-star ones. If you didn't get Japard or Bailu, then do not worry with Gallagher in your roster. Morza is an awesome and underrated sub DPS for some follow-up teams, specifically Fei Xiao, who is rerunning this patch. Ting Yun is still a very relevant Harmony unit that gives big buffs and energy to a single ally, so she would be slotted into a hypercarry team. Anya is another great hypercarry Harmony unit to use early on if you get her. She requires a bunch of speed though ideally. And Pella is just amazing too. She can apply AoE debuffs that amplify your team's damage by quite a bit. She's also very easy to build and use, and still is used to this day. So once you have your beloved chosen characters, you want to upgrade them as best as possible and build them a team. So let's see how we do that. To build a team, you most of the time have 2 patterns, a hypercarry team or a dual DPS team. A hypercarry team will want you to use a main damage dealer, what we call a DPS, then 2 supports and a sustain. All resources are focused on making that singular DPS pop off as much as possible. A dual DPS composition just replaces the 2nd support for a 2nd DPS or sub DPS. There are a bunch of characters that synergize from having another DPS on the field, and in these teams the support ideally has AoE buffs so that both DPS can excel. Finally, in the very early game, you can even run 1 DPS, 1 support, and 2 sustain. This helps you brute force harder content, especially when you don't have premium sustain options that can solo carry a team. It's also still used today in some modes, like the roguelike ones where enemies can scale beyond normal standards. You will want to focus on one core team you like and one that performs well, but you can mix and match characters depending on the content. Say for example you have 2 supports and a sustain you can always use, you can swap around the DPS. For example, bringing an erudition versus an AoE boss, or bringing a hunt versus a single target boss. Likewise with elements, you'll generally want to match the element of your DPS to one of the weaknesses of the enemy. Later on, you'll also want a 2nd team with 4 different new characters to tackle the endgame content, but you can wait on this for a while. So how do we now upgrade this team? Well, your character can be upgraded through their level, their trace levels, their relics, their light cone and its level, and eidolons. The resources needed are shown when leveling, and it will direct you to where you need to farm. You'll be using Trailblaze power to farm this, which is your stamina system, and this will regenerate over time for free. You can spend jades or fuel to regenerate it faster, but I don't think you need to spend jades to have a good experience, and you should save fuel for later levels. In the early game, you'll want to focus on leveling up your DPS and their offensive abilities. You'll also want to level up their light cone, just make sure to choose a decent one out of free-to-play options. All of this will let your damage scale to face these higher level enemies. The rest of your team can be leveled up somewhat so that they get tankier and don't get one-shot, but they're 2nd priority right now. So focus on farming XP materials, Ascension materials, and Trace materials. The last 2 will change depending on your unit's elements and their path, so make sure to check what they use before farming. I would also always do your weekly bosses, Echo of War. They are limited to 3 times a week but drop a ton of goodies, and stuff that you'll need to upgrade your abilities even further, as well as unlock passives for your units, which will be game-changing for most of them. You'll be ignoring relics, which is the core grind of gacha games for a bit. Equip ones that drop in the story and exploration that have good main stats, and you don't even need to bother leveling them up unless you're struggling a bit. You will replace every single one eventually. Good main stats to keep for the early game for DPS are attack chests, attack or speed boots, damage or attack orbs, and attack ropes. Later on, you'll want to invest into crit, but it's useless if you can't get a high ratio. Instead, focusing on scaling your damage with guaranteed results is better. For supports, you'll want speed and HP, and some units will want other stats on top like crit damage or attack to scale their buffs. Sustains will want speed and HP, attack or defense, depending on what their healing or shielding multipliers are. As you get to a high adventure rank of 50, you can start farming relics, as you'll now start dropping the highest rarity of relics quite often. You should focus on your DPS's ones whilst using decent survivability ones with speed for your supports and sustain units. Ideally, you farm a domain that offers both DPS and support sets in one, like the powerful and efficient Sacerdos and Scholar domain. Here are a few other domains that you can farm to bolster two character archetypes at the same time, but remember to farm ones that are good for your units. As you go through the game and level your adventure rank, you'll also unlock different game modes. Simulated Universe is one that is a roguelike mode with many different variants. The main concept remains the same, but the execution and mechanics are drastically varying. But basically, in all of these, you'll be fighting crazy enemies with new powers you'll pick up throughout the mode. You'll be able to gain permanent buffs that will save you a lot of hassle. Have fun with these, collect the free jades, and try awesome combos. This is your sandbox mode where you don't have a time limit to get stuff done. You also have 3 endgame modes: Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, and Apocalyptic Shadow. Memory of Chaos has 12 stages where you have 2 waves of enemies you need to beat. Sometimes it will be a couple big enemies, sometimes a singular one, sometimes a whole field of smaller ones. Your goal is to clear the enemies as fast as possible to get max rewards, and the enemies will change every refresh. It has a buff that you want to read and abuse to help your runs go smoother. Pure Fiction is an AoE focused mode. You will have tons of enemies spawn in. One will spawn in every time another one dies, and you want to defeat them as many times as possible in order to defeat the central target of a wave. Here you have multiple buffs you can choose between that can really help you out. Some of them can be broken and lead to some awesome team combos. And Apocalyptic Shadow is a boss rush mode. It's also focused on breaking the enemy toughness bar as fast as possible, but we won't go in depth into that here. The enemies here are very unique and don't follow normal mechanics, but the game mode also explains the systems very well if you need to know them. Just like Pure Fiction, you'll have buffs to choose between, and then there is a major buff on top that changes every refresh. You can try and tackle the lower levels of all 3 of these for some quick refreshable income, but this will happen when you're happy with your first team and are moving on to that second team. There is no rush at all. Do not worry if you cannot beat them early on, and don't worry if you cannot beat later stages when you start progressing. It's all about the journey. You'll get stronger and stronger and get more units as you continue. Now finally, here's a few things you can make sure to do whenever you're on to boost your progress even further. For everyday tasks, daily missions should be maxed to 500 to get your stellar jades. They'll stack up to a lot over time. You should also be spending your Trailblaze power when possible, as it will accumulate throughout the day. It can go past its cap and be saved, but not at a 1-to-1 ratio, so be sure to spend it up to level up your roster here and there. For weeklies, you'll want to do your Simulated Universe, the roguelike mode, to get its weekly rewards like more jades, how to shop currency, and more. You'll also want to do your 3 Echoes of War to max out your units. Doing Battle Pass missions is also a good idea. For monthly stuff, make sure to buy the passes in the permanent store. They refresh every month and are another great source of pull income. Ideally, focus on the limited ones if you don't have enough currency though. But yeah, I hope this video helps you learn a bit more about the game and what to do, and I hope you enjoy the game. Thanks, and have a good day.